The bitter wind that swept through Dallas, Texas in the winter of 1873 showed no mercy to Katherine Lawson as she huddled with her two small children in their dilapidated cabin on the outskirts of town, the last embers of their fire dying as surely as her hope. Katherine pulled the thin, tattered blanket tighter around her 5-year-old son James and 3-year-old daughter Emma, their small frames shivering against her as the cold seeped through the cracks in the walls. The children had not eaten a proper meal in 3 days, subsisting on the last of their cornmeal, and the few wild onions Katherine had managed to forage before the early winter frost had claimed everything green. "Mama, I'm hungry," James whispered, his voice weak but his eyes still bright in the dim light of their single candle. "I know, my love," Katherine replied, stroking his hair. "Tomorrow will be better, I promise." It was a promise she had no means to keep, but she could not bear to extinguish the hope in her children's eyes. 6 months ago, Katherine had been the wife of a respected shopkeeper, her life comfortable if not luxurious. Then typhoid had swept through Dallas, claiming her husband Michael among its many victims. With no family to turn to and limited skills to earn a living, Katherine had quickly found herself destitute. The shop had been claimed by creditors, and she and the children had been forced into this ramshackle cabin that barely kept out the elements. The wind howled louder, finding new cracks to penetrate their shelter. Emma whimpered, burrowing deeper against Katherine's side. "Sing to us, Mama," she requested, her small voice trembling with cold. Katherine began to sing softly, a lullaby her own mother had sung to her as a child. Her voice was the only warmth she could offer her children tonight, and she prayed it would be enough to get them through until morning when she could try again to find work or charity. The song had barely faded from her lips when a knock sounded at the door. Katherine tensed, unsure who would be visiting at this late hour. Cautiously, she extricated herself from her children and moved to the door, her heart pounding. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steadier than she felt. "Name's Adam Donovan, madam," came the reply, the voice deep but gentle. "I've brought some supplies if you're in need." Katherine hesitated, her hand on the rough wooden door. Strangers rarely brought good news, especially to women alone, but desperation made her brave. She opened the door a crack, peering out into the darkness. The man standing on her doorstep was tall and broad-shouldered, his face partially shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. In one arm, he held a bundle of firewood, in the other, a sack that appeared to be filled with food. The light from her candle caught the glint of a star pinned to his vest. He was the new deputy sheriff she had heard mentioned in town. "Mrs. Lawson?" he asked, his voice carrying a hint of concern. "I was riding by and noticed your place was dark. In this weather, that's not good. Thought you might need these." He gestured with his bundles. Katherine stared at him, pride warring with necessity. Her children's needs won out. "That's very kind of you, Deputy Donovan. Please come in." She opened the door wider, and Adam stepped inside, ducking his head slightly to clear the doorframe. In the candlelight, she could see him clearly now, a man of perhaps 30 years, with kind blue eyes and a face weathered by sun and wind. He wore the practical garb of a working lawman, sturdy trousers, a woolen shirt, and a leather vest beneath a heavy coat. "You can set the wood by the hearth," Katherine said, closing the door against the cold. Adam moved to the fireplace, setting down his burdens before quickly and efficiently building a fire. As the flames caught and grew, blessed warmth began to spread through the small cabin. "Stay warm, madam," he said simply, standing and dusting off his hands. "There's food enough there for a few days' bread, dried beef, beans, some apples. I'll bring more when I can." James and Emma had emerged from their blanket cocoon, drawn by the fire's warmth and the prospect of food. They stood wide-eyed, looking between their mother and the tall stranger. "Thank you," Katherine said, her voice thick with emotion she struggled to contain. "We are in your debt." Adam shook his head. "No debt, madam, just being neighborly." His eyes took in the cabin's sparse furnishings and the children's thin faces. "Times are hard, I know, lost my own folks young. No one should face winter alone." Katherine felt tears threaten and blinked them back. "Will you stay and share our meal? It's the least we can offer." A small smile touched Adam's lips. "That's kind of you. I could use a warm-up before heading back out." As Katherine prepared a simple meal from the provisions Adam had brought, the deputy sat by the fire with James and Emma. To Katherine's surprise, the normally shy children warmed to him quickly, especially when he produced two small wooden toys from his coat pocket, a horse for James and a doll for Emma. "I whittle some when things are quiet at night," he explained, seeing Katherine's questioning look. "Never know when you might meet someone who could use a toy." They ate together by the fireplace, the children more animated than Katherine had seen them in weeks. Adam spoke little of himself, deflecting questions with quiet humility, but she learned he had come to Dallas 6 months earlier from Montana Territory, taking the deputy position when the previous man had moved on. "What brought you all the way to Texas?" Katherine asked as she poured him a cup of coffee, a luxury among the provisions he'd brought. "Change of scenery," he replied with a slight shrug. "Worked cattle drives for years, then tried my hand at law enforcement up north. Dallas seemed like a good place to put down some roots." There was more to the story. Katherine could sense it in the way his eyes briefly clouded before he turned his attention back to James, who was showing him how the wooden horse could jump over a pillow. As the evening wore on, the children's eyelids grew heavy. Katherine tucked them into the small bed in the corner, their bellies full for the first time in days. "You have fine children, Mrs. Lawson," Adam said quietly as she rejoined him by the fire. "Please call me Katherine," she replied. "And yes, they are my greatest blessing." Adam nodded, setting his coffee cup aside. "Katherine, then," he hesitated, seeming to choose his words carefully. "If I may ask your situation here, is there no family who might help?" Katherine shook her head. "My parents passed years ago. Michael, my husband, had a brother back east, but we've had no contact since before James was born, when Michael died of the fever this spring." Her voice faltered. "The shop had debts I didn't know about. Everything was sold. This cabin belonged to an old customer who took pity on us." Adam's expression darkened. "Forgive me for saying so, but it doesn't seem right that the widow of a businessman should be left with nothing." "Perhaps not," Katherine agreed, "but right or wrong, it's our reality." She straightened her shoulders. "We'll manage. I've been taking in mending, and once Emma is a bit older, I can seek more regular work." Adam studied her for a moment, respect evident in his gaze. "I've no doubt you will manage, Katherine, but everyone needs help now and then." He stood, reaching for his hat. "I should be getting back to town. I'll check on you in a few days if that's all right." "More than all right," Katherine replied. "Thank you, Deputy Donovan." "Adam," he corrected with a smile. "Just Adam." As he left, closing the door carefully behind him, Katherine remained by the fire, its warmth seeping into her bones. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel something beyond worry and fear, a flicker of hope, as warming as the flames before her. True to his word, Adam returned 3 days later with more supplies and news of possible work for Katherine with the dressmaker in town, who needed extra hands for the holiday season. His visits became a regular occurrence, always bringing practical help: firewood, food, occasional toys for the children, but more importantly, bringing friendship to their isolated existence. Katherine learned that Adam had been orphaned at 12, raised by an uncle on a cattle ranch in Montana. He'd ridden with trail outfits for years before a particularly violent encounter with rustlers had led him to pursue a career upholding the law instead. There was a quietness about him that spoke of past sorrows, but also a fundamental decency that showed in everything he did. The children adored him. James followed Adam around like a shadow whenever he visited, peppering him with questions about horses and guns and the badge he wore. Emma, more reserved by nature, would nevertheless break into a wide smile when Adam appeared at their door, often clutching a new wooden animal he had carved for her growing collection. As December deepened, Katherine found herself watching the road for Adam's approach, her heart quickening at the sight of his tall figure on horseback. She told herself it was merely gratitude and the children's happiness that caused her anticipation, but in quiet moments by the fire after the children were asleep, she admitted the truth to herself. She was developing feelings for the kind-hearted deputy. It was foolish, she knew. A widow with 2 young children was hardly a catch for an unattached man with prospects. Yet she couldn't help noticing how Adam's visits grew longer, how his eyes lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking, how their conversations extended into the night long after the children were asleep. On a clear, cold evening a week before Christmas, Adam arrived with not only provisions but also a small pine tree strapped to his saddle. "Children need a Christmas tree," he said simply, as he set it up in the corner of the cabin. James and Emma were beside themselves with excitement, helping Adam secure the tree in a bucket while Katherine watched, her heart full. "I can't possibly repay all your kindness," she said quietly when the children had gone to bed, exhausted from decorating the tree with pine cones and paper stars they had cut together. Adam looked at her across the small table where they sat drinking coffee. "Katherine, you don't owe me anything. Seeing you and the children doing better, that's payment enough. Still," she insisted, "you've done so much for us." "Why?" The question hung between them, laden with meaning. Adam's eyes held hers and Katherine felt her breath catch. "At first, it was because no one should suffer in the cold if I could prevent it," he said slowly. "Then it was because those children of yours deserve every chance at happiness." He paused, seeming to gather courage. "And now? Now it's because the hours I spend in this cabin have become the best part of my days." Katherine felt a flush rise to her cheeks. "Adam, I know it's forward of me," he continued quickly. "You're still grieving and you have the children to consider. I don't expect anything, Katherine. But I wanted you to know that my help comes with no strings attached, even if my feelings have grown beyond friendship." Katherine reached across the table, her hand covering his. "My grieving for Michael is done," she said softly. "He was a good man and a good father, but our marriage was comfortable, not passionate. His death was a tragedy for the children and for me, but mostly for the security we lost." She took a deep breath. "What I feel when I see you riding toward our cabin, that's something I haven't felt before." Adam turned his hand beneath hers, their fingers intertwining. "I never expected to find someone like you here in Dallas," he confessed. "When I took this job, I thought it was just another stop along the way. Now I can't imagine being anywhere else." The winter deepened, bringing snow and ice to Dallas, but within Katherine's cabin, warmth flourished. Adam's visits became daily occurrences when his duties allowed. He spent Christmas Day with them, bringing modest but thoughtful gifts, a warm shawl for Katherine, wooden puzzles for the children, and a feast that made their small table groan. As January turned to February, Katherine's work with the dressmaker had become steady enough to provide a modest income. Adam helped her repair the worst of the cabin's deficiencies, patching the roof, fixing the shutters, reinforcing the door. The place was still humble, but it was becoming a true home. One evening in late February, after the children had gone to bed, Adam sat beside Katherine on the small bench outside the cabin. Despite the chill, the night was clear, stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. "Katherine," Adam said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant, "there's something I need to tell you." She turned to him, concern creasing her brow. "What is it?" "I've been offered a position sheriff of a small town near Fort Worth. The pay is better, and there's a house that comes with the job." He paused, watching her face fall. "I haven't given them my answer yet." Katherine fought to keep her voice steady. "It sounds like a wonderful opportunity. When would you leave?" "That depends," he said, taking her hand in his, "on whether you and the children would consider coming with me." Katherine stared at him, unsure if she had heard correctly. "What are you saying, Adam?" In answer, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small silver ring. It was simple but beautiful, with a delicate pattern etched around its band. "I'm saying I love you, Katherine Lawson. I love your strength, your kindness, your determination. I love James and Emma as if they were my own. I'm asking if you would do me the great honor of becoming my wife, of making a new start together as a family." Katherine's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Adam Donovan, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her into his arms, his lips meeting hers in a tender kiss that promised a future brighter than either had dared to dream. The town of Cedar Springs, located 30 miles from Fort Worth, was not much larger than Dallas had been before the railroad came through, but it was prosperous and growing. The sheriff's house, situated just off the main street, was a modest 2-story structure with a front porch and a small yard palatial compared to Katherine's cabin. Their wedding had been a simple affair in Dallas before they departed, attended by the dressmaker who had employed Katherine, the town's minister and his wife, and a few of Adam's colleagues. James had proudly carried the rings, while Emma had scattered wildflower petals before her mother. Now, 3 weeks later, Katherine stood on the porch of their new home, watching as Adam showed James how to properly groom his new pony, a wedding gift from Adam that had made the boy speechless with delight. Emma sat beside Katherine on a small rocking chair, meticulously arranging her wooden animals and doll on the porch railing. "Mama," she asked suddenly, "is Papa Adam our real papa now?" Katherine knelt beside her daughter. "He is your real papa in all the ways that matter, sweetheart. He loves you and James very much, just as your Papa Michael did, and he will always take care of you just as he takes care of me." Emma considered this seriously, then nodded. "I like having Papa Adam," she declared. "He makes you smile big." Katherine laughed, brushing a kiss against her daughter's cheek. "Yes, he certainly does." The transition to Cedar Springs had not been without challenges. As the new sheriff, Adam had to establish his authority and gain the town's trust. Katherine, too, had to find her place in the community, navigating the social expectations of being the sheriff's wife while also securing work with the local seamstress to contribute to their household. James and Emma adjusted quickly, as children often do. James was enrolled in the town school, thriving under the structure and companionship it provided. Emma, still too young for formal schooling, became Katherine's shadow during the day, absorbing everything around her with bright-eyed curiosity. As spring blossomed across the Texas landscape, so too did Katherine's love for Adam deepen. She discovered new facets of him daily, his unwavering fairness, his gentle patience with the children, his wry humor that could diffuse tense situations, his passion for justice that made him respected throughout the county. And at night, when the children were asleep and they retired to their bedroom, Katherine discovered the joy of being truly desired and cherished by a man who saw her not as a possession or a convenience, but as an equal partner. One evening in early April, Katherine sat on the porch, mending one of Adam's shirts as the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Adam had been gone since early morning, called away to help the county marshal track a group of cattle rustlers who had been plaguing ranches to the north. Katherine tried not to worry. Adam was capable and cautious, rarely taking unnecessary risks. Still, law enforcement in the territories was dangerous work, a fact she had accepted but never quite grown comfortable with. The sound of hoofbeats drew her attention, and relief flooded through her as Adam's familiar figure appeared on the road leading to their house. He looked tired but unharmed as he dismounted, patting his horse's neck before securing it to the hitching post. "Welcome home," Katherine called, setting aside her mending as she stood. Adam's face lit up at the sight of her, the weariness falling away as he bounded up the porch steps to gather her in his arms. "Best sight a man could come home to," he murmured against her hair. "The children have been waiting for you," Katherine said, reluctantly extracting herself from his embrace. "James wants to show you his schoolwork, and Emma has been saving a piece of apple pie specifically for you." Adam laughed, his arm remaining around her waist as they entered the house. "And how was your day?" "Productive," Katherine replied. "Mrs. Bennet ordered 3 new dresses for her daughters, and I finished the alterations on Mayor Phillips' wife's gown for the Founders' Day celebration." Inside, their reunion was interrupted by excited shrieks as James and Emma descended upon Adam, each vying for his attention. He listened solemnly to James's account of his arithmetic achievement and admired Emma's newest drawing, before allowing himself to be led to the kitchen for his reserved piece of pie. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Adam and Katherine sat together on the porch swing, his arm around her shoulders as they enjoyed the cool evening air. "Did you catch the rustlers?" Katherine asked. Adam nodded. 3 of them. "Young fools who thought stealing cattle was easier than honest work. They'll stand trial in Fort Worth next month." He sighed. "The leader got away, though, a man called Silas Morgan. He's been trouble throughout the territory for years." Katherine rested her head against his shoulder. "You'll catch him eventually." "Maybe," Adam conceded, "but there will always be another outlaw to replace him. That's the nature of our world out here." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Let's talk of pleasanter things. How are the preparations for Founders' Day coming along?" Katherine smiled. "The committee is in a state of constant panic, as usual. Mrs. Phillips is convinced the decorations won't arrive from Dallas in time, and Reverend Thompson is worried his speech will put everyone to sleep." "As long as they don't expect me to make a speech, I'll be happy," Adam chuckled. "No speeches required," Katherine assured him. "Just escort your beautiful wife to the dance and try not to step on her toes." Adam feigned offense. "I'll have you know I'm considered quite light on my feet for a lawman." "We shall see," Katherine teased, then grew more serious. "Adam, there's something I've been meaning to tell you." He shifted to look at her, his expression attentive. "What is it, love?" Katherine took a deep breath. "I've been feeling a bit peculiar lately, tired in the mornings, certain smells bothering me." Adam's brow furrowed with concern. "Are you ill? Should we send for Dr. Harper?" "No," Katherine said, a smile spreading across her face. "I don't need a doctor to tell me what I already know. Adam, I'm with child, our child." Adam stared at her in stunned silence for a moment before a look of pure joy transformed his features. "A baby. We're having a baby." At Katherine's nod, he whooped loudly, then immediately clapped a hand over his mouth, glancing toward the children's bedroom window. "Sorry," he whispered, then swept Katherine into a gentle but fervent embrace. "When?" he asked, pulling back to look at her with wonder. Dr. Harper believes the baby will arrive in early November, Katherine replied. Are you happy, Adam? Happy doesn't begin to cover it, he said, cradling her face in his hands. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone, Katherine Donovan, and now you're giving me the gift of a child. Another child, Katherine corrected gently. James and Emma are as much yours now as this baby will be. Of course, Adam agreed immediately. Our family is growing, and I couldn't be more blessed. The news of Katherine's pregnancy was received with joy by the children and with warm congratulations from the townspeople. Cedar Springs had embraced the Donovans, appreciating Adam's fair and steady leadership as sheriff and Katherine's gracious involvement in community matters. As summer settled over Texas, bringing heat that shimmered in waves above the dusty streets, Katherine's condition became more noticeable. Adam grew increasingly protective, insisting she rest during the hottest parts of the day and scaling back her work for the seamstress. I'm pregnant, not made of porcelain, Katherine protested one particularly stifling afternoon as Adam insisted on carrying a basket of laundry she had been about to lift. Humor me, he replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I've waited my whole life to fuss over a pregnant wife. Katherine couldn't help but smile at that. When you put it that way, how can I deny you the pleasure? Founders' Day arrived in late July, bringing the entire community together for a celebration in the town square. Despite the heat, spirits were high as children participated in games, women displayed their finest cooking and needlework, and men competed in friendly tests of strength and marksmanship. Katherine, now 5 months pregnant with a noticeable roundness to her belly, sat in the shade of a large oak tree, watching as Adam supervised a horseshoe competition. James was among the competitors in the children's division, his face a mask of concentration as he prepared to throw. You're glowing, Katherine, said Rebecca Harper, the doctor's wife, as she joined Katherine on the bench. Pregnancy suits you. Thank you, Katherine replied with a smile. Though I admit I'll be glad when autumn brings cooler weather, Rebecca laughed. I remember that feeling well. 3 summer pregnancies taught me to appreciate winter confinements. She nodded toward Adam. Your husband hasn't taken his eyes off you all day, you know, even while judging that competition. Katherine felt a blush rise to her cheeks. He's been extraordinarily attentive. As he should be, Rebecca said approvingly. You two make a fine match. It's clear to everyone how devoted you are to each other. Katherine watched as Adam cheered for James, who had just made a successful throw. We found each other when we both needed someone most, she said softly. I sometimes think about how close we came to never meeting if he hadn't ridden by our cabin that cold night. Providence, Rebecca nodded decisively. Some things are meant to be. The celebration continued into the evening with a community dance held in the newly constructed town hall. Lanterns hung from rafters, casting a warm glow over the festivities as a small band played lively tunes. Adam, handsome in his best shirt and vest, led Katherine in a careful waltz, mindful of her condition. Have I mentioned how beautiful you look tonight? He murmured, his eyes appreciative as they took in her green dress, specially made to accommodate her growing belly. Only 3 times, Katherine laughed, but I don't mind hearing it again. You are radiant, Adam said, spinning her gently. The most beautiful woman in Texas. Katherine was about to respond when she noticed Adam's attention shift, his body tensing slightly as he looked toward the entrance of the hall. Following his gaze, she saw a deputy from a neighboring town scanning the crowd with an urgent expression. Adam, she questioned, recognizing the change in him. Wait here, he said, guiding her to a chair along the wall. Something's not right. Katherine watched as Adam made his way through the crowd to the deputy. The two men spoke briefly, their expressions grave, before Adam nodded and returned to her side. "I'm sorry, Katherine," he said, kneeling beside her chair. "There's been a sighting of Silas Morgan and his gang about 10 miles west of town. The county marshal is assembling a posse and they've requested my assistance." Katherine felt a chill despite the warm evening. "Tonight? Can't it wait until morning?" Adam shook his head. "They've been raiding isolated homesteads. A family was hurt in the last one, a woman and her son." "I need to go, Katherine." She wanted to protest, to beg him to stay where it was safe with her and their children. But she knew the kind of man she had married, one who would never turn away from his duty or from those in need of protection. "Be careful," she said instead, touching his cheek. "Come back to us safely." Adam pressed a kiss to her palm. "Always." He stood, looking around. "I'll find James and Emma, explain that I need to leave. Will you be all right getting home with them?" "Of course," Katherine assured him. "Rebecca and Dr. Harper can accompany us if needed." "Go do what you must." Within the hour, Adam had joined the posse of lawmen gathering at the edge of town. Katherine stood with the children, watching as the group of mounted men prepared to ride out into the darkness. Adam broke away from the group for a final goodbye, dismounting to embrace James and Emma. "Mind your mother while I'm gone," he told them seriously. "I'm counting on you both." "When will you be back, Papa Adam?" Emma asked, her small face solemn. "As soon as I can, sweetheart," he promised, touching her cheek gently before turning to Katherine. Words seemed inadequate as they faced each other, aware of the danger he was riding toward. Instead of speaking, Adam drew Katherine into his arms, mindful of her belly, and kissed her with a passion that conveyed everything he couldn't say aloud. "I love you," she whispered as they separated. "Stay safe." "I love you more," he replied, a tradition between them now. "Take care of yourself and our little one. I'll be home before you know it." Then he was gone, riding with the posse into the night, leaving Katherine to shepherd their children home with a heart heavy with worry but firm in its faith that he would return. The next 2 days were the longest of Katherine's life. She went through the motions of normal routine, preparing meals, helping James with his schoolwork, playing with Emma, all while listening for hoofbeats that would herald Adam's return. On the evening of the second day, just as she was putting the children to bed, a knock came at the door. Katherine's heart leaped, then faltered. Adam wouldn't knock at his own home. With trepidation, she opened the door to find Deputy Marshal Fletcher standing on her porch, his hat in his hands. The look on his face sent ice through her veins. "Mrs. Donovan," he began, his voice grave. "No," Katherine said, shaking her head. "No, don't tell me he's alive," Fletcher said quickly, seeing her distress. "But he's been shot. Dr. Harper is with him now at his surgery." Katherine pressed a hand to her mouth, stifling a sob of relief mixed with fresh fear. "How bad is it?" "Took a bullet in the shoulder," Fletcher explained. "Lost a fair amount of blood, but the doctor thinks he'll pull through. He's tough, your husband." "The children," Katherine said, glancing back into the house. "I can't leave them alone." "My wife is just down the street," Fletcher offered. "She'd be happy to stay with them while you go to Adam." Within minutes, arrangements had been made, and Katherine was hurrying toward Dr. Harper's surgery, one hand supporting her belly as she moved as quickly as her condition would allow. The doctor's surgery was a small building adjacent to his home. Katherine entered without knocking, following the sound of voices to the treatment room at the back. Adam lay on the examination table, his shirt removed, a bandage wrapped around his left shoulder and chest. His face was pale, but his eyes were open, alert enough to turn toward the door as Katherine entered. "Katherine," he breathed, reaching out his good arm toward her. She was at his side in an instant, taking his hand, tears flowing freely down her cheeks. "You promised to come back safely," she scolded gently. A weak smile touched his lips. "I did come back, with a bullet hole," she pointed out, unable to keep the tremor from her voice. "Doctor." Harper approached, wiping his hands on a cloth. "He's a fortunate man, Mrs. Donovan. The bullet passed clean through the fleshy part of his shoulder, missing bone and major blood vessels. With proper rest and care, he should make a full recovery." Katherine nodded gratefully. "Thank you, doctor." "When can I take him home?" "Tomorrow, I think," Harper replied. "I want to monitor him overnight to ensure no infection sets in, but he's stable enough that you could go home to your children and return in the morning." "I'm staying," Katherine said firmly, leaving no room for argument. "Mrs. Fletcher is with the children." Adam squeezed her hand. "Stubborn woman. You married me knowing that," she reminded him. Dr. Harper smiled at their exchange. "I'll have my wife bring in a comfortable chair for you, Mrs. Donovan, and perhaps some tea." Left alone with Adam as the doctor stepped out, Katherine stroked the hair back from his forehead. "What happened? Did you catch Morgan?" Adam's expression darkened. "We tracked them to an abandoned homestead. There was a firefight. I took this bullet from one of Morgan's men, but we captured 4 of the gang. Morgan himself escaped again, though he was wounded." He shifted, wincing as the movement jarred his shoulder. 2 of the marshal's men were killed, Katherine, good men with families." "I'm sorry," she said softly, knowing how deeply such losses would affect him. "But I can't help being selfishly grateful that you're alive." "Morgan won't stop," Adam said, his voice tight with pain and determination. "He's like a rabid wolf, and he'll keep killing until someone puts him down." Katherine shuddered at the hardness in his tone, so different from the gentle man she knew at home. "That's for another day," she said firmly. "Right now you need to rest and heal." The next morning, with Dr. Harper's approval, Adam was moved home. The journey, though short, exhausted him, and he was pale and sweating by the time they got him settled in their bed. The children were both frightened and fascinated by their father's injury. James, in particular, seemed to view Adam's wound as a badge of honor, asking numerous questions about the gunfight that Katherine had to eventually curtail. "Your papa needs rest, not an interrogation," she told her son gently but firmly. "Yes, Mama," James replied, chastened. "But Papa Adam is the bravest sheriff ever, isn't he?" Adam, who had been dozing, opened his eyes at this. "Not the bravest, son, just doing my job. Real bravery is what your mama shows every day, taking care of all of us." James considered this thoughtfully. "Can I be brave like both of you when I grow up?" "You already are brave," Adam assured him. "Now, how about you take your sister outside for a while so I can rest? Maybe practice your reading under the oak tree." As the children left, Katherine adjusted Adam's pillows and helped him take a drink of water. "You need to stop encouraging his fascination with your dangerous profession," she said mildly. "He'll find his own path," Adam replied. "But there are worse things than wanting to protect others." Katherine couldn't argue with that. "Rest now," she said, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "I'll be right downstairs if you need anything." Adam's recovery progressed steadily over the following weeks. By mid-August, he was able to move around the house comfortably and had begun light duties at the sheriff's office, though Katherine insisted he avoid field work until Dr. Harper gave full clearance. The summer heat gradually gave way to the milder days of autumn. Katherine's pregnancy advanced, her belly now prominently rounded as she entered her 8th month. The baby was active, especially in the evenings, and Adam took great delight in feeling the movements beneath his hand. "I think it's a boy," he declared one evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset. "The way he kicks, he'll make a fine horseman someday," Katherine laughed. "And if it's a girl, then she'll be as beautiful and spirited as her mother," Adam replied without missing a beat. And I'll be wrapped around her tiny finger from the moment she arrives. You're already wrapped around Emma's finger, Katherine pointed out affectionately. True enough, Adam acknowledged with a grin. I've become quite the soft touch in my old age. Their peaceful domestic routine was shattered one crisp October morning when a rider galloped into town, bringing news that chilled every resident of Cedar Springs. Silas Morgan and his remaining gang had been spotted less than 5 miles away. Adam, now fully recovered from his wound, immediately called together his deputies and sent word to the county marshal. "We'll need to organize a defense of the town," he told the gathered men at his office. "Morgan's desperate and wounded. That makes him unpredictable and dangerous." Katherine, who had come to bring Adam his forgotten lunch, stood in the doorway of the office, listening with growing dread. When the meeting dispersed, she approached her husband. "You're planning to confront him," she said. It wasn't a question. Adam met her eyes steadily. "It's my job, Katherine. You nearly died the last time," she reminded him, her voice tight with fear. "And if I don't stop him, innocent people could die," Adam replied gently. "Including possibly you and our children. I can't take that risk." Katherine knew there was no argument she could make that would sway him from what he saw as his duty. "Then be smarter than last time," she said instead. "Don't give him a clean shot at you." Adam pulled her into his arms, her pregnant belly pressing against him. "I promise to use every advantage, every trick I know." He kissed her deeply, then rested his forehead against hers. "Go home, lock the doors, and keep the shotgun close. Keep the children inside until this is over." Katherine nodded, fighting back tears. "I love you, Adam Donovan." "I love you more, Katherine Donovan," he replied, their ritual now invested with urgent meaning. As Katherine made her way home, she noticed the town was already battening down shutters being closed. Horses moved to rear corrals, women hurrying children indoors. The threat of Morgan's gang had spread quickly. At home, Katherine gathered James and Emma, explaining in simple terms that they needed to stay inside because some bad men might be coming to town. James, now 6 and perceptive beyond his years, understood more than she said. "Papa Adam will stop them, won't he?" he asked, his small face serious. "He'll try his very best," Katherine answered honestly. "That's what brave sheriffs do." As evening approached, the tension in Cedar Springs was palpable. Katherine had the children eat an early supper, then settled them in the parlor with books and toys, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy while her own nerves were stretched to breaking. The first gunshots came just after sunset, distant at first, then closer as the confrontation moved toward town. Katherine extinguished all lamps except one small candle, ushering the children upstairs to the bedroom furthest from the street. She positioned herself by the window, shotgun across her lap, her heart pounding as she strained to see what was happening in the gathering darkness. Flashes of gunfire illuminated the main street. Men shouted orders and warnings. A building somewhere caught fire, casting an eerie orange glow over the scene. Then, more clearly than the other sounds, came a voice Katherine recognized Adam's, calling out to someone, demanding surrender. The response was more gunfire. Katherine closed her eyes briefly, whispering a desperate prayer for her husband's safety. When she opened them again, the street below had erupted into chaos. Men on horseback, Morgan's gang, she presumed, were galloping through town, firing indiscriminately. The sheriff's men returned fire from defensive positions along the street. A pounding at the front door startled her so badly she nearly dropped the shotgun. Keeping her voice calm for the children's benefit, she called out, "Stay here. Don't move until I come back." Descending the stairs cautiously, Katherine approached the door. "Who's there?" she called, the shotgun ready in her hands. "Mrs. Donovan, it's Deputy Miller. Sheriff sent me to check on you and the children." Katherine recognized the voice of Adam's youngest deputy. Still cautious, she asked, "What was the name of the pony my husband gave my son?" "Thunder, madam," came the immediate reply. "Please, we need to hurry." Satisfied, Katherine unlocked the door. Deputy Miller stood on the porch, his young face streaked with soot, a revolver in his hand. "Are you all well?" he asked urgently. "Yes," Katherine confirmed. "What's happening?" "Morgan and his men came in from the north, shooting up the place," Miller explained quickly. "We've got most of them pinned down by the livery, but Morgan himself broke away. Sheriff asked me to make sure you were safe." "Adam, is he?" "He's fine, madam, leading the effort at the livery. But he wanted me to move you and the children to the church. Several families have taken shelter there, and it's well guarded." Katherine nodded, relieved. "I'll get the children." Within minutes, they were hurrying through back streets toward the church, Miller leading the way while Katherine held Emma in one arm and clutched James's hand with the other. The sounds of gunfire had intensified, now concentrated in the area of the livery stable, as Miller had said. They were within sight of the church when disaster struck. A figure emerged from the shadows between buildings, blocking their path. In the dim light, Katherine could make out a tall, gaunt man with a week's growth of beard, his left arm in a crude sling, a revolver held steady in his right hand. "Well now," the man drawled, "what have we here?" "The sheriff's family, I reckon." Miller moved protectively in front of Katherine and the children, his own gun raised. "Back off, Morgan. These folks are under my protection." Morgan, for it was indeed the notorious outlaw, laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. "Young pup like you. I've killed more men than you've shaved." Katherine pulled the children close, her mind racing. The church was only 50 yards away, but it might as well have been miles with Morgan blocking their path. "You're surrounded, Morgan," Miller said, his voice steadier than his years would suggest. "Your men are either dead or captured. Give it up." Morgan's eyes narrowed. "Then I've got nothing to lose, do I?" His gaze shifted to Katherine, taking in her pregnant condition with a cruel smile. "Donovan's woman carrying his brat. How convenient. If you harm them, there won't be a hole deep enough for you to hide in," Miller warned. "I don't plan on hiding," Morgan replied, "but I do plan on making Donovan suffer before I die." He aimed his gun directly at Katherine. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Miller lunged forward, firing as he moved. Morgan's gun roared in response. Katherine screamed, pushing the children behind her as both men fell. Then another shot rang out, and Morgan, who had been struggling to rise, collapsed permanently, a red stain spreading across his chest. Adam appeared from the shadows, his gun still trained on Morgan's still form as he rushed to Katherine and the children. "Are you hurt? Any of you?" "No," Katherine managed, her voice shaking. But Adam knelt beside his deputy, who lay groaning, blood seeping from a wound in his thigh. "Hang on, son. We'll get you to Dr. Harper." Looking up at Katherine, he added, "Get the children to the church. It's over now. Morgan's men are all accounted for." Katherine hesitated, unwilling to leave either Adam or the wounded deputy. "Go," Adam urged gently. "I'll be right behind you with Miller." Reluctantly, Katherine ushered the children toward the church, where they were met by Reverend Thompson and several other townspeople who had taken refuge there. As promised, Adam arrived minutes later with Miller supported between himself and another deputy. As Dr. Harper was summoned to attend to Miller and other wounded, Adam took Katherine and the children aside to a quiet corner of the church. "I'm sorry you were put in danger," he said, his face etched with guilt and concern. "I should have brought you here myself." "You were needed elsewhere," Katherine said, touching his cheek, And Miller protected us bravely. Adam nodded grimly. He's young, but he's got the makings of a fine lawman. He looked at James and Emma, who were wide-eyed but remarkably composed given the night's events. You two showed great courage tonight as well. James straightened at the praise. We weren't scared, were we, Emma? Emma, who had buried her face in Katherine's skirts during the confrontation with Morgan, looked up and nodded solemnly. Not too scared, she amended. Adam smiled, ruffling her hair. A little fear is sensible when there's danger. Even sheriffs feel afraid sometimes. Really? James asked, sounding dubious. Really, Adam confirmed. Especially when the people we love most are in danger. He met Katherine's eyes over the children's heads, and she saw in his gaze both the terror he had felt at finding them confronted by Morgan and the profound relief that they were safe. The aftermath of what became known as the Morgan raid lingered in Cedar Springs for weeks. 3 buildings had been damaged by fire, 4 citizens wounded, and one of Morgan's gang killed in addition to their leader. The rest were transported to Fort Worth to stand trial. Deputy Miller recovered from his wound and was celebrated as a hero for his protection of the sheriff's family. Adam, already respected, found his standing in the community elevated further by his leadership during the crisis. For Katherine, the events had a more personal impact. The shock and fear of that night seemed to awaken something in her body. 3 days after the raid, she went into labor, nearly 2 weeks earlier than expected. Dr. Harper was summoned to the Donovan home as Katherine's pains intensified. Adam, who had barely left her side since the night of the raid, paced anxiously in the parlor while Emma and James were kept occupied by Rebecca Harper. The labor was long and difficult. As hours passed with no news, Adam's worry grew, his imagination conjuring every possible complication. When he could stand it no longer, he approached the bedroom door, only to be intercepted by Rebecca. "She's doing well, Sheriff," Rebecca assured him. "First babies often take their time and Katherine is strong." "But it's been so long," Adam protested. "Shouldn't there be news by now?" Rebecca patted his arm sympathetically. "My husband will call you the moment there's anything to report. Try to be patient." Patience, however, had never been Adam's strongest virtue, especially where Katherine was concerned. Another hour of pacing brought him back to the bedroom door just as a new sound emerged, the thin, indignant cry of a newborn. Adam froze, his heart seemingly suspended in his chest as the cry grew stronger. Then the door opened and Dr. Harper appeared, his face weary but smiling. "Congratulations, Sheriff," he said. "You have a son, a strong, healthy boy." Adam felt his knees weaken with relief and joy, and Katherine, tired but well, Harper assured him, "She's asking for you." Adam entered the bedroom with reverent steps. Katherine lay propped against pillows, her face pale and drawn with exhaustion but radiant as she gazed down at the small bundle in her arms. She looked up as Adam approached, tears of joy glistening in her eyes. "Come meet your son, Sheriff Donovan." Adam sat carefully on the edge of the bed, staring in wonder at the tiny, red-faced infant swaddled in a soft blanket. "He's perfect," he whispered, reaching out a tentative finger to touch his son's cheek. Katherine shifted, offering the baby to Adam. "Hold him. He should know his father's arms." With infinite care, Adam gathered his son into his arms. The baby's eyes opened briefly unfocused, but seemingly looking directly at Adam before closing again in contentment. "What shall we name him?" Katherine asked softly. Adam thought for a moment. "Michael," he suggested. "To honor the father James and Emma lost, if that's all right with you." Katherine's eyes filled with fresh tears at the gesture. "Michael Adam Donovan," she said, testing the name. "It's perfect." A gentle knock at the door preceded James and Emma peeking in, their curiosity overcoming instructions to wait. Adam beckoned them over. "Come meet your baby brother," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "This is Michael." The children approached cautiously, their faces awestruck as they gazed at the newest member of their family. "He's so small," James observed. "You were that small once," Katherine told him with a smile. "Both of you were." Emma reached out tentatively to touch the baby's hand. "Does this mean I'm not the baby anymore?" she asked, a hint of concern in her voice. Adam laughed softly. "You'll always be our baby girl, Emma, just as James will always be our firstborn son. Michael doesn't change how much we love either of you." As the family gathered around the bed, marveling at the new life that had joined them, Katherine felt a sense of completion that she had never expected to find after the desperate winter night, when she had huddled with her children in a cold cabin, facing starvation and despair. From that darkness had come Adam, bringing not just firewood and food but love, security, and a future brighter than she could have imagined. As she watched him with their children James and Emma crowding close, as he showed them how to gently touch their new brother, Katherine offered a silent prayer of thanksgiving for the journey that had brought them to this moment of perfect joy. Spring returned to Cedar Springs, bringing with it the first anniversary of Adam and Katherine's marriage. Baby Michael, now 5 months old, was thriving, a happy, robust infant who had inherited his father's blue eyes and his mother's determined temperament. The town had enjoyed a peaceful winter following the Morgan incident. Adam's duties as sheriff had settled into a predictable routine that allowed him to spend ample time with his growing family. Katherine had resumed her sewing work on a limited basis, finding joy in both her professional skills and her role as mother and wife. On a particularly fine April morning, Adam surprised Katherine with news that he had arranged for Rebecca and Dr. Harper to watch the children for the day. "Why?" Katherine asked, curious. "Is there something special happening?" Adam smiled mysteriously. "Just thought we deserved some time alone together. It's been a year since you agreed to marry me after all." Katherine returned his smile, touched by his remembrance. "So it has." "Did you have something particular in mind for our day?" "I thought we might ride out to Willow Creek," Adam suggested. "Pack a picnic, enjoy the spring air. What do you say?" "I say it sounds wonderful," Katherine replied, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. "Give me an hour to prepare." The day was perfect for their outing, warm sunshine, tempered by a gentle breeze, wildflowers dotting the prairie in vivid splashes of color. They rode at a leisurely pace, Katherine on her mare Daisy, Adam on his stallion Thunder, with a pack horse carrying their picnic and other supplies Adam had mysteriously insisted on bringing. Willow Creek was a small, clear stream about 5 miles from town, its banks lined with the trees that gave it its name. It was a popular spot for town gatherings in summer, but on this spring weekday, Adam and Katherine had it to themselves. As they dismounted and secured the horses, Katherine noticed Adam seemed unusually nervous, checking and rechecking the pack horse's load. "Is everything all right?" she asked, laying a hand on his arm. "Perfect," he assured her quickly. "Just want everything to be right for today." They spread their blanket beneath a large willow whose new leaves created a dappled shade. Adam unpacked a feast: fried chicken, biscuits, apple pie from the town bakery, and a bottle of wine he'd been saving for a special occasion. As they ate, they talked of everything and nothing: the children's latest antics, town gossip, plans for expanding their garden. Katherine found herself relaxing completely for the first time in months, the responsibilities of motherhood and household temporarily set aside. After they had finished eating, Adam suggested a walk along the creek. Hand in hand, They strolled beneath the willows, pausing occasionally to admire a particularly beautiful wildflower or watch a fish jump in the clear water. "I've been thinking," Adam said as they reached a small clearing. "About our future." Katherine looked at him curiously. "What about it? I love being sheriff," he continued, "but I've been wondering if it's what I want to do forever, especially now with Michael and James and Emma growing so fast." "You're considering a change?" Katherine asked, surprised. Adam had always seemed content in his role as Cedar Springs' protector. He nodded, leading her to a fallen log where they could sit. "I've been offered land, a ranch about 15 miles west of town. The owner, old Sam Baxter, is moving back east to live with his daughter. He approached me last month, said he'd rather sell to someone who would care for the place properly than to the highest bidder." Katherine's eyes widened. "A ranch, Adam, that's a significant change." "I know," he acknowledged, "and I wouldn't consider it without your full support." "But Katherine, I grew up on a ranch. I know the work, know the life. It's hard, but it's good, and it's safer than wearing a badge." "You've worried about the danger," Katherine said softly, understanding dawning. "Since Morgan." Adam took her hands in his. "When I saw you and the children confronted by him that night, I realized how quickly I could lose everything that matters to me. Yes, another outlaw could target a rancher too, but the risk is different, less constant." Katherine considered his words carefully. "The children would have space to run and play. James already loves horses. And we could expand our family without worrying about town quarters becoming too cramped," Adam added, a hopeful note in his voice. Katherine smiled at that. "Are you saying you want more children, Sheriff Donovan?" "With you, as many as you're willing to give me," he replied honestly. "I never thought I'd have a family at all, Katherine. Now that I do, I find I'm greedy for more of this happiness." Katherine leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. "I want that too, and I think a ranch would be wonderful, if it's truly what you want." The joy that lit Adam's face confirmed she'd given the right answer. "I hoped you'd say that," he said, reaching into his pocket, "because I may have already given Sam a preliminary answer." He withdrew a folded document, opening it to reveal a deed. "Happy anniversary, my love. It's ours if we want it." Katherine stared at the paper, then at her husband. "You bought a ranch as an anniversary gift. Technically, I've only made the first payment," Adam clarified with a grin. "But yes, I wanted to show you the place today if you're agreeable. It's only another mile from here." Unable to contain her excitement, Katherine threw her arms around his neck. "Yes, let's go see our new home." They remounted their horses and rode the short distance to what would become the Donovan Ranch. As they crested a small rise, Katherine caught her breath at the view that spread before them. A sturdy two-story farmhouse stood in a natural clearing, sheltered by cottonwood trees. Beyond it, a large barn, corrals, and several outbuildings composed a well-organized working ranch. Rolling pastureland stretched in 3 directions, while to the west a line of low hills provided a backdrop of rugged beauty. "It's about 2,000 acres, Adam explained as they approached. "Good water from a spring-fed creek, plenty of grazing land. The house needs some work, but it's sound." They dismounted in the yard, and Adam helped Katherine up the steps to the wide front porch that wrapped around 2 sides of the house. The door was unlocked, a common practice in rural areas where neighbors were few and far between. Inside, Katherine discovered a home that, while dusty from disuse, had good bones and a welcoming feel. Large windows let in ample light. A stone fireplace dominated the main room. The kitchen was spacious, with a cast iron stove and a pump at the sink that brought water directly from the well. Upstairs, 4 bedrooms offered more space than their family had ever enjoyed. Katherine stood in what would clearly be the master bedroom, gazing out the window at the vista of land that would be theirs. "What do you think?" Adam asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Could you be happy here?" Katherine leaned back against him, covering his hands with her own. "I could be happy anywhere with you and the children," she said truthfully. "But yes, Adam, I think we could build a wonderful life here." He turned her in his arms, his eyes searching hers. "Then it's decided. We'll make the Donovan Ranch our home." "Yes," Katherine agreed, her heart full. "When can we move?" "I need to train my replacement as sheriff," Adam said. "Mayor Phillips thinks Deputy Miller is ready with some guidance. Say 2 months," Katherine nodded eagerly. "That gives us time to prepare the house. It needs a thorough cleaning, curtains, some repairs." Adam laughed, kissing her to halt the flow of plans already forming. "Slow down, Mrs. Donovan. We have plenty of time to make it perfect." "It's already perfect," Katherine corrected him. "Because it's ours." They spent another hour exploring the property before reluctantly heading back to town. As they rode, Katherine's mind raced with plans and possibilities, her excitement growing with each passing moment. "What will we tell the children?" she asked as Cedar Springs came into view. "The truth," Adam replied simply. "That we're embarking on a new adventure together. James will be thrilled about the horses. Emma might need more convincing, but once she sees the kittens in the barn, I think she'll come around." Katherine laughed. "You didn't mention kittens before." "I'm saving some surprises," Adam winked. "Old Sam said his barn cats had a litter about 6 weeks ago." As predicted, the children had mixed reactions to the news. James was immediately enthusiastic, peppering Adam with questions about horses, cattle, and whether he could learn to use a lasso. Emma was hesitant until the kittens were mentioned, at which point she demanded to visit immediately to make sure they're being taken care of properly. Baby Michael, too young to understand, simply babbled happily in response to the excitement around him. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Katherine divided her time between preparing their current home for sale, organizing supplies for the move, and making regular trips to the ranch to clean and measure for curtains and furniture. Adam worked closely with Deputy Miller, gradually transferring responsibilities while also learning everything he could from Sam Baxter about the ranch before the old man departed for Pennsylvania. By mid-June, the transition was complete. On a bright, clear morning, the Donovan family loaded the last of their belongings into wagons and bid farewell to their home in Cedar Springs. Friends and neighbors gathered to see them off, many promising to visit once they were settled. As they approached the ranch, their ranch, Katherine felt a sense of rightness, of coming full circle. From the desperate widow huddled in a cold cabin to the wife and mother starting a new chapter on her family's own land, her journey had been one of unexpected blessings. "Welcome home," Adam said as he lifted her down from the wagon in front of their new house. Katherine looked around at their children, James already racing toward the barn, Emma clutching her doll while eyeing the porch swing with interest, baby Michael cooing in his basket, and then at her husband, whose love had made all of this possible. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night?" she asked, taking his hand. "When you brought firewood and food to our cabin," Adam smiled, memory softening his features. "I believe I said, 'Stay warm, madam.' And I have been warm ever since," Katherine said softly. "Not just from fires, but from the love you've brought into our lives." Adam drew her close, his kiss a promise of all the years to come. Around them, their new home waited to be filled with laughter, tears, growth, and the countless moments that would compose the tapestry of their shared life. As they broke apart, baby Michael began to fuss, and Emma called out for help with the porch swing. Adam and Katherine exchanged a smile before moving to attend to their children's needs. stepping together into the future they had built from the ashes of separate pasts, a future founded on that cold winter night when a compassionate cowboy had brought firewood, food, and the simple instruction to stay warm.